A controversial census gets underway in Sudan. It's meant to be a vital step in ending years of civil war. But former rebels in the south say they won't be bound by the result from Khartoum in the north. So how much mistrust is there between the two former enemies? And is peace and democracy at risk in Africa's largest country? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. Well, it's the first time in more than 15 years Sudan has conducted a census. The results won't be released until September at the earliest. But in a country hanging on to a fragile peace accord, the count is causing controversy. Officials waded through water on the first day of the census, making their way to remote areas of Sudan to count the country's citizens. The census is seen as crucial for the first democratic elections in 20 years, taking place next year. One of the questions in the census: are you from the north or the south? Well, that's causing many people to be sceptical that the results will be accurate. Many southerners were displaced during the civil war, and they want the chance to go home before the count. And the SPLM, which governs the south, is challenging the census. Its leaders say questions about ethnicity and religion should be included. The census will also be used as a guide for distributing power and wealth in the country. That includes the profits from Sudan's oil industry. Now, the people of Darfur, a separate conflict in Sudan, have also rejected the census, with some factions threatening to block it by force. Residents at one of the main refugee camps have been staging protests against the count. They say they reject the census because they can't trust the Khartoum government and doubt the accuracy of the results. And as the conflict lingers, the UN Under-Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs said on Tuesday as many as 300,000 people may have died in the 5-year conflict. Well, Sudan's been split along north-south lines for decades. Those divisions intensified during a civil war that started in 1983. The two parties signed a peace deal in 2005. That accord created a national coalition government and is supposed to pave the way towards democracy. But the south has long felt marginalised by the northern majority and doesn't feel part of the national government. The two halves are split along religious lines too. While the north is predominantly Arab and Muslim, the south is largely non-Arab and Christian. Well, joining us now are our guests in Khartoum, YASSER ARMAN. He's the spokesman and the Deputy Secretary-General of the SPLM. That's the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. Also in Khartoum, Yassin Al-Hag Abdin. He's the head of Sudan's Central Bureau of Statistics. And in Boston, Alex Duval, a researcher and expert on African affairs. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Yassin Abdin in Khartoum, let me start with you, if I may. I mean, how critical is this census, and is it likely to be disputed by the South, as many people think it will be?
I hope it will not be disputed, because it is planned and executed on the best known scientific practices of bureaus of statistics everywhere in the world. And it's important because it is over 10 years now since Sudan conducted the census. The last one was in 1993, which is over 10 years. And usually countries have a census every 10 years. And as part of the comprehensive peace agreement signed in 2005, which stipulates that in the second year of interim period there will be a census, which is going to be a basis for the restructuring the ratios of power and sharing of wealth.
OK, let's bring in YASSER ARMAN there in Khartoum as well. YASSER ARMAN, this census is being seen as a vital step in paving the way for the first democratic elections in 23 years. How is the SPLM viewing this census?
Well, in the SPLM, we had serious observation and reservations on many aspects of the census. Nevertheless, we agreed that it is an important step to take, and it is part of the process of the CBA. But in the first place, there was no transparency, and there was no popular involvement in the north. In the south, the IDPs and the refugees, they do not come home. Yet in Darfur, there is a serious security concern And if you add all those together, they may impact negatively on the census, and this is our serious concern.
All right, let's bring in Alex DeVol there in Boston. Alex DeVol, give us a sense of the scale of this census, because Sudan is Africa's biggest country. It's been racked by civil war. There's Darfur's problems in the west, as YASSER ARMAN was saying there. Can it ever really be accurate?
I think it can be accurate. As has been explained by Yassine, the best scientific demographic principles can be applied to the census. The question really is not the expertise of Sudan's demographers, which is superb. The problem is the politics around it and the technical difficulties of actually counting many people in these far-flung areas. Because I should point out in addition that although the last census was in 1993, in most areas of the South, there was no census. In fact, there has been no census since independence in 1956. And nobody really has a good idea of how many people there are at all in southern Sudan. And at the time when the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was negotiated just over 3 years ago, it was politically arbitrarily decided that 1/3 of Sudanese were Southerners, and no one really knows if that is the correct figure. So it is an extremely politically sensitive and absolutely crucial exercise to get an accurate estimate of the size and the distribution and the identities of all the Sudanese people if a really free and fair exercise in democracy is to go ahead next year.
Yasin Abdin in Khartoum, I mean, one of the worries, of course, is that Southerners displaced to the north are entitled to vote if they return to the south. But surely millions of people, millions of these people have no way of getting home. I mean, how's the government going to help them?
Let me first explain that this census has been on consensus basis, because as the Constitution stipulates and the CPA also, we had a popular council for census, which is composed by the Southern Sudan government, together with the UNFPA, United Nations, and the donors, and the Central Bureau of Statistics, together with some experts which were from Liberia and India and South Africa. They made up a technical working group which designed every part of this census. It has nothing to do with parties. It has nothing to do with politics. It is actually because of sensitivity. We planned this census out the sphere of political influence, and the census now is in second day, and the way it's conducted proves that we are not influenced by politicians at all. And I must say that it is true that Southern Sudan has never been counted as is today, because now every part of Southern Sudan, they have enumerators around, and they are going around counting people. And this is the first time all Sudan, including Darfur. When people talk about Darfur, it seems that there is war going on at the moment. It is some social and political tension in Darfur, but it's not going to prevent a good and transparent census in Darfur.
Okay, let's ask YASSER ARMAN of the SPLM if he thinks the census is politicized. I mean, how contentious is the true size of the South going to be? Because if the South is undercounted, how will this affect your representation in any National Assembly after next year's elections?
Well, the important thing is to have an accurate census that will not bring a dispute, because this census is also going to affect the power sharing and the wealth sharing, and also the planning for the future in many aspects of having a sustainable development. And I believe that if whatever result we are going to get is going to be accepted to both sides, that what will bring stability and will take Sudan ahead.
Alex de WAAL, clearly there are huge fears that if Southerners living in the north don't get to go home to the south, that they may become disenfranchised. How worrying is that?
I'm really quite concerned, and I think that there's a certain amount of acrimony that is likely to develop over the census. Some members of the SPLM have been accusing the ruling National Congress Party of having structured some of the questions in the census and the timing of the census in such a way that the South will be not fully counted. And the NCP is charging that the SPLM actually agreed to the all the questions that are included in the census. And I think it's actually very important to get beyond this question of who's to blame for any shortcomings and recognize that there has to be real trust and real confidence in the outcome of this if the exercise in democracy is to go ahead effectively. Because if the government of South Sudan were to say, with some justification, as may be the case, the Southerners have not been fully counted, we're not properly represented in the government that is going to arise out of the elections, then this would be a very strong card for the separatists in southern Sudan. They would say, look, once again we've been shortchanged, we're not fully part of Sudan, we're not fully recognized as citizens. And if the chance of national unity is to be given its best chance, the best run for its money in the elections and in the referendum on self-determination in the south, there has to be that mutual confidence that the national electoral, the democratic process is a level playing field, that all Sudanese citizens are fully included.
OK, gentlemen, stay with us, won't you? Because it's time for a short break now. But when we come back, we'll take a closer look at how the census might affect the future of Sudan. More on that. Stay with us.